Irish Cocoa by Tricia Holbrook. Read by Tricia Holbrook. Prologue. There were 4 Marys in my class in primary school, 3 Anns, 6 Jackies after Jackie O, and a host of others named after their grannies and mummies. Then there was me, CoCo Higgins. I don't know where my mother got the name. She did do a fashion course in the local tech when I was young, but it was more about how to tie-dye t-shirts. She was about as far removed from Coco Chanel as you could imagine. I don't know how my name had 2 capital C's in it either. That was definitely the kind of thing my mother would do. My sister fared better 2 years later, when Mom gave her an ordinary name, like Delia. She loved later that she had the same name as Delia Smith, and lived up to it by being very good in the kitchen when she was older. Just as well as Mom couldn't boil an egg. My brother definitely got the short straw when he was born 6 years after that. Mom had taken up guitar lessons that year, and he was named after her hero, Carlos Santana. Poor Carlos put paid to her plans to take to the road for a world tour. But not for long. Dad was an artist, not just as a fad, but all the time. He worked at home in a big shed at the end of the garden. We weren't allowed in there much, but he taught in the local tech too. He was the teacher for the night class in art and hated it with a vengeance. He said their lack of talent interfered with his creativity. But without the extra money, we probably would have starved, certainly in the early years before Dad started to make a name for himself and sell some of his paintings. In fact, if Delia had lived up to her name and become quite a good cook, we probably would have starved anyway. Delia and, of course, Mrs. Doyle next door. Mom was far too busy inventing careers for herself to be much interested in housekeeping or cooking for us kids. Mom said she was Dad's muse. In the beginning, he always smiled when she said that. I didn't know what a muse was. I thought it was kind of like a wife. I didn't know that Mom wasn't really Dad's wife. A moonlight ceremony on a beach in Wicklow, blessed over by someone who was related to the High King of Tara, didn't really count as a legal marriage. I asked Mrs. Doyle next door if she was Mr. Doyle's muse. She laughed so much all her extra chins and her wobbly tummy shook in a kind of rhythm. She said Mr. Doyle wasn't big into drawing, and there probably wasn't enough lead in a pencil to get all her curves down on one page. There were lots of drawings of Mom around our house, and even more down in Dad's shed. She must have been cold down there because she never had any clothes on. We spent a lot of time in Mrs. Doyle's, Delia and I, when we were kids, before Carlos came along. She had 2 girls too. They were older, but we still played with them and with their toys. That was the best part. We got their dresses when they were finished with them, but they were fat and the dresses were way too big. Mom said we shouldn't call them fat, but they were. I saw their tummies when we were in the bath together. Delia and I had little flat tummies. Their tummies were wobbly and stuck out. A bit like Mom before Carlos came along. Not like Mom in the pictures that Dad drew. I liked it in Mrs. Doyle's. It was always warm in there and kind of safe somehow. We always seemed to go there in a big hurry. We would be sitting in the kitchen playing imaginary games, and then there would be shouting, usually Mom, and we would head out the back door and through the gap in the hedge and in Mrs. Doyle's back door. She always gave us a hug and told us we were in the pot. I could never figure that out. We were too big to fit in the pot, and anyway, the pot was always full of stew. Even now, whenever I think of Mrs. Doyle, I can smell stew and lime cordial with water. It looked like wee in the glass, but it tasted great.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?